Hello everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the 1111 Matrix Code Revealed. As always, I'm your host, Garrett King. All right, folks, hopefully with any luck, I can get through this video without coughing. I actually tried to record this video yesterday and, geez, just kept having this coughing fit. I felt like it ruined the whole thing, so I'm going to try again today to do this. I have been sick for the past 2 weeks. It's basically just been this cough. I suspect maybe that it's COVID. I don't know. Because it kind of started off feeling like allergies, and that's what I thought it was. And then it kind of progressed, not into a full-fledged cold, but just this cough. And it was just annoying. So, but anyway, enough of that. Hopefully, like I said, I can get through this video without coughing fits. So let's just see what happens. I have some really cool information that I want to show you guys today. And it's weird how all of this information just kind of comes about. I mean, I can't explain it. You know, it's just thoughts, ideas, whatever that just come to me. And so one of them was literally about 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. I woke up with the word Tesseract in my head. Now, to be honest with you, if I have ever heard that word before, I'm not aware of it. So when the word just popped up into my head, I thought, am I having a stroke? You know, like, am I trying to form a word, but for some reason it's coming out sounding weird? So yeah, it was just an odd thing. You know, like I said, it just popped into my head out of nowhere. Didn't think a whole lot about it. You know, I got up, took the dogs out, you know, did my normal morning routine. And then when I finally sit down at the computer, I opened up a search window and typed in Tesseract, and lo and behold, I spelled it correctly, and it came right up, which I thought was interesting. So that whole process started this whole idea, this whole research that I'm about to show you. For those of you that don't know what a Tesseract is, let's move over here to Windows. And so this was my last presentation in my last video, and so I've just kind of added on to this one. Let's click over here to this tab. So a tesseract is also known as a hypercube. It is the 4-dimensional equivalent to a cube, much like a cube is a 3-dimensional equivalent to a square. While a cube has 6 square faces, a tesseract consists of 8 cells, or in other words, 8 square cubes, okay? And that's what we're seeing over here, the shape that looks like very similar to a cross. So we have 8 cubes that are making up this form right here. And this first animation, this Tesseract here in blue, I thought this was really cool. It's showing a cube within a cube. And if you watch the animation, it's like the cube is giving birth to itself and then folding back onto itself and then reconsuming itself and then just giving birth to itself again. If you just watch this animation, that's what's happening. It's just feeding back onto itself and then rebirthing itself. It's kind of cool. It brings to mind the symbol here of the Ouroboros, the snake, consuming itself over and over again. And when you stop and think about this, think very clearly about what we are actually seeing here and the phrase that has come up time and time again: the beginning is the end, and the end is the beginning. Okay, it's just a cycle. It's a repeating cycle. And that is what we're seeing right here with this tesseract just unfolding and then folding back onto itself over and over and over. This middle animation is showing how this can unfold to actually form this shape over here, this sort of three-dimensional cross. But unlike a conventional cross that has, just the T shape, this has the extending arms coming out in both directions. And I have rebuilt this in a 3D program, which I want to show you. Let's move back over here and let's pull this up. So what you're seeing here on screen, it looks like just a cross because we're looking at it dead on, okay? But if I rotate this, we can clearly see that it is the unfolded tesseract that we just saw on the other slide. And so I find this kind of interesting that we get the shape of the cross when viewed head on. But then if we rotate it this way and kind of get it into position, you can see that we're getting that symbol, that one of those symbols that first came to me when I started all of this research in the very beginning that led me to the Vedic square. We got that cross shape, that symbol that is an ancient symbol for the sun. And this is looking straight down onto the tesseract, the unfolded tesseract. So it's interesting that we're getting these connections, these symbols showing up time and time again. And that's basically what the main theme of this video is going to be, is about these repeating numbers and how they transform and come back to themselves in multiple different ways. And I think we're getting closer and closer, maybe, to understanding what this code is trying to tell us. And I think it is one of the things that I've been saying all along. It's about these resets, and that there never is an end, because it just starts back over at the beginning. And you'll see that play out, hopefully, as I go along here. But definitely you can see that in this animation of this tesseract, this unfolding and rebirthing itself over and over and over. The same symbol with the snake consuming itself and giving itself new life over and over and over. And I do think that is, like I just said, the big message, one of the bigger messages maybe of this entire code, is that there is no end. There is no end. We will simply transform into something new. Even with this oncoming reset in 2058. I talk about the world being consumed by a solar flare, and it sounds devastating. It would be devastating. But at the same time, it's a reset, and something new will emerge. So let's just kind of go through this very quickly. One of the things I wanted to point out, since we are looking at a cross here, the Hebrew word for the cross has the value of 37 in Hebrew ordinal gematria. Now, we know that the number 37 runs throughout this entire code, throughout the entire Bible, the Torah itself. It's abundant. We see it over and over and over and over and over. And this idea that I have that 37 being the value of Jesus as well in Hebrew ordinal gematria, and Jesus being the energy source, the thing, the energy that binds everything together, binds us all together. It's what this entire makeup of existence is made from, is this thing known as Jesus. It is the energy source. So it's just interesting to me that the cross in Hebrew has the value of 37. And so who supposedly died on the cross? Well, Jesus, whose value is also 37 in Hebrew ordinal gematria. Now, like I said, we have this symbol that looks like a cross. And so therefore the cross in matrix gematria is 1369. And as we know, 1369 is also the value of Jesus in matrix gematria. So right there, those connections alone are pretty telling. So let's move forward with this idea of a tesseract in my head, okay? And then seeing these animations when I searched for it on Wikipedia. And then also the search on the internet also led me to the movie Interstellar, which I ended up watching. A good friend of mine said it was a great movie, one of his favorites. And so I watched it and I was just floored, with the whole idea of this tesseract at the end, being the sort of the place or the method in which these, beings, which ultimately ended up being ourselves, or a future version of ourselves, were communicating with us in the past. So, I mean, this just opened up a floodgate of thoughts and ideas in my head. And I've always had this feeling with the Torah that somehow it could be transformed into some kind of shape, some kind of symbol. I talked about how if you make the width of the Torah 37, character letters across, we wind up with, 8,238 or something like that, rows down. And then how at the very last row, there's one letter missing. So then I had that thought that, that if there is a letter missing and we add Aleph to the beginning of the Torah, that would shift all those letters down. We would have this perfect sort of column of 37 characters wide, 8,238. I think it's 8,238 rows down. If I'm getting that wrong, I apologize. Let's do something here. I just want to make sure that I'm getting the number correctly. So, because it has been a while since I've looked at this. Okay, so we're going to do 37 numbers across. We're going to look at just the Torah only. Hit retrieve, and then scroll all the way down. So, yes, 8,238. So I was right. And then we can see that there is this missing letter down here. Hopefully you guys can see this. Let me see if I can do this, make it a little bit easier for you guys. Okay, so we're looking at the last row, and then right here is just an empty space. So if we add Aleph to the beginning and shift all of these letters over, we would have this perfect column of, again, 37 across, 8,238 down. However, that does not form a perfect square. It doesn't form a cube. I've looked at the numbers and it doesn't work. However, I had another thought. And this really led to all of this that I'm about to show you here. So let's shift off of this, go to standard. Okay. So just to show you, we have 304,805 character letters that make up the Torah. Okay. And like I said, if there is a letter missing, then that would give us 304,806 character letters. So I've done these calculations that I'm about to show you using both sets of numbers, 304,805 and 304,806. Okay. Now, if we took 304,805, and this is the current number of character letters in the Torah, and we were to square this number, let's see here. I think we have to go to scientific. There we go. Retype it, 304,805, and we want to see what the square root of this number is. Well, it's 552.091477927, and so on. You can see it's this huge number after that decimal point. So that decimal point and that long string of numbers is indicating to us that it's not a perfect square. It's not a perfect square. So my thought was, well, how do we get a perfect square? Or can we? And the thought that came to my mind was to take 304,805 and square that number. Square that number. So to do that, basically anytime you square a number, you're taking the number times itself. So 304,805 times 304,805 is this number here. It's 92,906,088,025. Okay? Now, there's an easier way that we can do this. We can simply type in 304,805 and then come over here and just hit this button and square the number. And again, as you can see, we get the same number, 92,906,088,025. Okay? Now, that is taking the Torah. Basically, that means we would have 304,805 character letters going across in a straight line, and then 304,805 characters going straight up the side. And then, of course, across the top and then down the other side. It would essentially look like this right here. Okay? So 304,805 character letters going across, and then 304,805 character letters going up and down. And that would give us this total, the number that I just showed you. Now, this is what is cool. So let's jump over here to the next screen. As I mentioned, I did this using both numbers, 304,805 and 304,806, accounting for the missing letter. So when we square that first number, 304,805, and we get that 92,906,088,025, if we add these numbers separated by the commas, which we have seen before is one of the methods of decoding these numbers, we get a number that we have seen before. Big time. Okay, so I'm just going to show you here. We're going to take 92 plus 906 plus 88 plus 25. And folks, what are the chances that we get 1111? Okay, 1111. The second of the first two numbers that started this whole thing. This whole thing. And just the simple fact that we are starting with 304,805, squaring that, getting a new number, adding the number separated by the commas, and we wind up with 1111. It's the transformation that I'm talking about. This redeveloping, these numbers that are redeveloping themselves and transforming themselves and coming back again to numbers that we have already seen. It's this whole rebirthing and regenerating themselves again and again and again and again and again. You can see this playing out in the math. Now, let's look at the second number. So let's say that Aleph is added to the Torah, giving us 304,806 character letters. And we're simply going to square that number. So 304,806 squared gives us 92,906,697,636, just as you can see right here. And once again, we're going to add the numbers separated by the commas. So 92 plus 906 plus 697 plus 636 gives us 2,331. 2331. Now, for those of you that have been paying attention, that number should stand out to you because I talked about it in the last video. But when I talked about it in the last video, the number was flipped. Okay? So what we're essentially seeing here is the reversal of the value of the word truth in Hebrew, or sorry, not Hebrew, but in matrix gematria. Okay, so the word truth has the value of 1332 in matrix gematria. And over here, we have 2331. So it is the mirror flip. The mirror flip. Now, let's look at something here. So we're talking about separating the numbers that are divided by the commas, okay, and adding those up. So we could technically do that again here with 1111 and 2331. If we were to do that, what I found interesting is that the second number, the 304806 squared, and then these numbers separated by the commas being added up, gave us 2331. We do that same formula, add the numbers separated by the commas, and we get 333. Because 2 plus 331 would be 333. The very first number that started this whole thing for me, figuring all of this out. So it started with 333 and then it went to 1111. So again, it's interesting that we're seeing these reconnections to numbers from the very beginning. Now, if we were to do that same thing with 1111, so we would take 1 plus 1, 1, 1, and we would get 112. Now, here's where the interesting stuff really, it's all interesting to me, but but here's where, it really starts to kind of take off. So 333, as you recall hopefully from the very beginning, is the value, or there's a lot of values, a lot of phrases that make sense with this whole entire code. But one of them that really stood out to me was a code to find God. A code to find God has the value of 333. Now, if we take 333 and add 112, we get 445. Okay, so 445. It's interesting that 445 would be the value of the phrase, the code to find God. Okay, so we have a code to find God and the code to find God. It's a difference of one word, a and the. So again, it's interesting that we're seeing this. It's like we were shown a code in which to find God, and it's almost like it's saying, now we have found the code to find God. And then the number 112 by itself is the value of the phrase magic code. Magic code. It's interesting. It's incredibly interesting, these number connections. And again, coming simply from the value of the Torah, like not the value of the Torah, sorry, but the number of character letters in the Torah, the current version and the version of if we were to add the letter Aleph. So incredibly interesting connections going on here. Now, as I showed you, if we took 304,805 and squared it, we would have this square. And this one square would be made up of 92,906,088,025 letters, like character letters in this entire thing. So I started visualizing this as a cube, okay? So we would have one face. That's what we're talking about here. This would be one face of a cube. We would need 6 of these. So we would need to place one in the front, one on top, one in the back, one on the bottom, and then one on each side. And that would form a hollow cube. A hollow cube. Okay? So basically that's what I did mathematically. I took that first number, 92,906,088,025, and multiplied it times 6. Okay? That would give us 6 sides of a cube. So that gave us a brand new number. 557,436,528,150. Again, add the numbers separated by the commas, and we get, as you can see right here, 1671. 1671. Now, what's interesting about this number, 1671, is it is the exact number of letters in Genesis 1. The entire chapter of Genesis 1 has 1,671 character letters. Now, what I find interesting about that is, what is Genesis 1? It is the creation story, okay? It is the creation story in chapter 1. It's the beginning of the heavens, the earth, all the animals, etc., 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 okay? So again, it's just fascinating to me that we get this connection. Think back to this animation of the Tesseract unfolding, giving birth to itself, giving itself a new beginning. Okay? Now, if we do the same thing, 1671, add the numbers separated by the comma, so 1 plus 671 gives us 672. And 672 just happens to be the value of this word right here, which means will be removed. Will be removed. It is also the value of this word, which means burn. Burn. Now, think back to what I've been talking about with this event in 2058, solar flare event. What will be removed? What will be removed? Now we're getting this connection telling us to look at basically Genesis 1, the first chapter. And again, we have will be removed and the word burn. Now let me just kind of jump forward here just a second. So now if we look at 304,806, this would be adding Aleph to the Torah and giving us now kind of a new version, but it's going to have 304,806 character letters, okay? So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to square that and then multiply that times 6 to give us a hollow cube. That hollow cube is going to give us 557,440,185,816, okay? Again, add the numbers separated by the commas, and we get this number 1998. 1998. Here's where things are going to start coming together and the puzzle pieces are going to start fitting together. So 1998, if we come over here and look at Genesis 1:1, and we look at the value of the first 5 words, the first 5 words that mean in the beginning God created the heavens. That's it. The value in standard Hebrew gematria is 1998. The same number we're seeing right here, 1998. What is missing? What is the last portion of Genesis 1:1 that's missing? It would be the words, and the earth. And the earth. Look up here. Will be removed. What was removed? And the earth. That's the part that's missing from completing this verse. So again, the first 5 words have the value of 1998. The portion that's missing is 703. We'll come to that in just a second. But 703 is the value of and the earth. Now think about this. So in 2 Peter, so it'd be chapter 3, verse 7, in the surface text of the Bible, it says, by the same word, the present heavens and earth are reserved for fire. for fire, being kept for the day of judgment and destruction of the ungodly. Okay? Think about this, folks. By the same word, what is that talking about? Well, we're getting pointed towards Genesis. We're getting pointed towards the first 5 words. Well, by the same word, what is the first word of Genesis? It is Bereshit. It means Genesis. It means in the beginning. If you remember, I talked about how this one single word can be broken down into all of these other words that describe exactly what God's intentions are. Okay? So we'll go through this really quickly. So the first 3 letters of Bereshit, okay, is Bet, Resh, Aleph. It means created. Created. Okay, the first 3 letters. Now the last 3 letters make up this word, which means set in place or to make stationary. The first 3 letters again have an alternate meaning, which is to cut down. The first 2 letters and the last 2 letters, excluding the 2 in the middle, make up the word covenant. The 2 letters in the middle that we just excluded make up the word fire, so it's Aleph and Shin. And then if we take all of the letters except for the first letter, it makes up the word head or first fruit. And then the first letter and the last 2 letters make up the word house. And then the first 2 letters by themselves make up the word son, S-O-N. So in this one word, in this one single word, in connection with the verse itself, it is telling us that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. He set them in place. He made them stationary, but he means to cut them down using a covenant of fire. And that covenant of fire is the head of his house, his first fruit, his son, S-O-N, which we also know is S-U-N. So think about that. It's telling us that he means to cut it down using a covenant of fire. We're being told that the present heavens and earth are reserved for fire, and it's telling us by the same word that in which everything was created. This word right here in the beginning is the same word in which everything will end. Again, telling us that the beginning is the end and the beginning is the end and the end is the beginning. That is an incredible connection, folks. An incredible connection. Okay. So, and again, like I said, we're seeing the portion will be removed and the word burn, 1998, giving us the value of the first 5 words. In the beginning, God created the heavens. The latter portion has been removed. It's talking about the earth. Now, when I talk about the earth being removed, I don't mean, well, I don't personally mean, I have no idea what's going to happen. But from my viewpoint, it doesn't mean that the earth is going to be destroyed in the sense that the earth is just going to explode and become nothing but just millions of tiny little rock particles. I'm talking about the earth is going to be transformed through fire. It is going to be something devastating. It is going to consume the entire surface of the planet. It's going to burn everything. But through that, the ashes and through time, things will renew themselves and become born again. It's a reset. It's a reset. Okay. So now let's move forward. So I was looking at these numbers in the terms of squaring them, okay? And then forming a cube out of just the squared sides. Well, what happens when we actually take 304,805 and cube that number, okay? So what does it mean to cube a number? Well, to cube a number, that means we're taking whatever number we're cubing. So in this case, 304,805. And that means we're going to multiply itself by itself 3 times. That's going to give us the width, the height, in the depth of a cube. That's called cubing a number. So to visually represent that, we would see it like this. So 304,805 character letters going across, 304,805 character letters deep, and then 304,805 character letters going up. Okay, this would give us a perfect cube. So I've done the same thing with 304,806. And so that's what we're going to look at here. So 304,805 cubed gives us this astronomically large number, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce. I think it goes up into the quadrillions. I don't know. I'm not even going to attempt it. But again, we're going to take the same numbers separated by the commas and add them up. Okay? So we're going to take 28 plus 318 plus 240 plus 160 plus 460 plus 125 gives us 1331. 1331. I found this number interesting because 1331 is 11 cubed. Okay? So it's 11 times 11 times 11. And let's just show you the math here. So 11 times 11 times 11. 1331. And again, we can get to that easier if we just go 11 and cube it. So we'd click this button right here. Looks like an X and a 3. So, and you can see where it says cube. So 11 cubed is 1331. So again, this connection back to the number 11. Now, if we take 304,806 and cube it, again, we get another astronomically large number. And so we're going to add the numbers separated by the commas. So we're going to add 28 plus 318 plus 518 plus 879 plus 638 plus 616 gives us 2,997. Now, something interesting going on here. Anytime that we take 304,806, this is the one where we're going to take and add Aleph to the Torah. And that would give us 304,806 character letters. Anytime we square that number, we cube that number, whatever we do, we always come back with a number that is going to allow us to transform that number to 999. Okay, so as you just saw here, we get 2,997. Follow that same procedure of adding the numbers separated by the commas, and we would take 2 plus 997 would give us 999. If we go back and look over here, when we were squaring the numbers, the same thing with 1998. Add 1 plus 998, and we get 999. What's fascinating about the number 999 is it is the value for the word light. Light in matrix gematria. Light. It's like these two versions of the Torah are working in unison somehow. Okay? Almost like they were meant to. And well, not even really almost like. I think they are meant to. They're meant to work in unison. We're meant to discover that, yes, there is a character letter missing, but the two of these work in unison side by side. It's almost like thinking of this, the inner cube being maybe 304,805, transforming into another cube that's 304,806, and then feeding back into itself and just rebirthing itself and regenerating itself over and over and over. It's an interesting way of looking at it. Okay. So, again, we have this number that comes back to 999, and then we have this number up here, 1331. Now, here's an interesting connection. So, I went into the Hebrew Bible looking for any verse that, or the Torah, let me say, any verse that had the value of 1331. And I found one. It's Genesis 37:19. 37:19. Think about this. 37 times 19 is 703. 703. What did I just talk about a few moments ago that was removed? It was and the earth. And the value of that is 703. 703. Again, it's how these numbers connect and come back to themselves, even though the numbers have been expanded into these larger numbers. And then when shrunk back down, they reconnect. It's this amazing symphony of numbers taking place. It's incredible. So, thinking of this cube, I did this two different ways. So, knowing that an unfolded tesseract is going to give us 8 cubes, I took the first numbers when we squared them. Okay, so we have one side of a cube, and those numbers have been squared. And then I talked about how taking that one side and putting it into 6 separate sides to form a cube. It would be a hollow cube. Okay, so in order to get the tesseract with 8 cubes, we would have to take that one side and multiply it times 48. Okay, hope that makes sense. Let me kind of show you what I'm talking about here. So let's go back up here. So looking at just this red tesseract here that's been unfolded, this one side, let me move this over. This one side right here where my mouse is, this would be one side that makes up that number. What did I just say? It was like 92 billion. So just one side of that. So that's why I'm taking it times 48, because there's 48 different sides to all these cubes. Okay. I know that probably sounds a little technical, but if you think about it, it'll make sense. Okay. So let's come back here. Let's zoom out a little bit. Okay, so 92,906,088,025 times 48, again, gives us this huge ass number. We're going to add the numbers separated by the commas, and we get this number 1380. 1380. Now, at first glance, it didn't connect to me. I couldn't find a connection that I could think of. So moving on to the next one. Okay, so this is taking 304,806, squaring it, and then taking that number times 48 to get a cube, again, a hollow cube. But we're going to get a tesseract, so it's going to be 8 cubes. Gives us this huge number, and again, add the numbers separated by the commas, and we're back to 1998, okay? 1998, a number that's going to turn into 999 if we add the numbers separated by the commas. But even this one up here, 1380, add the number separated by the commas, and we get 381. I still couldn't find a connection. So I always tend to think in terms of adding. Very seldom do I think about subtracting. Okay, that's where we have to use our thinking caps here. So in this particular case, I subtracted the numbers. So 1998 minus 1380 gives us 618, which just happens to be the value of the word creation. Creation. Think about this, folks. We're seeing connections to Genesis, the whole reset, creation, talking about our creation. This more and more and more is pointing towards this idea that we are in a mathematical simulation and that numbers will transform, things will reset, but they never end. They never end. Ever. It's simply like there is no beginning and there is no end. That's a very hard thing to grasp, to think about. You know, I was talking to a friend on the phone. Well, not on the phone, but like we were messaging one another. And I said, think about your cell phone. Your cell phone has existed Now, this is going to sound kind of strange when I say this, but has existed since the beginning of time. Not in the form that you're seeing it, but the elements, every element that makes up this phone has existed since the beginning of time. Because every element that makes up this phone comes from the earth. It comes from the earth. Think about it. I mean, it's a hard thing to kind of wrap your brain around, but it's like, I don't know, a wooden pencil, has existed since the beginning of time because that wooden pencil came from a tree. Well, that tree came from another tree at one point, and that tree came from a tree before it. It's just like people, we don't think about it, but we have existed since the beginning of time. Not in this form that you're seeing me, but I existed within my parents, who existed within their parents, who existed within their parents, who existed within their parents, and so on, and so on. Again, not necessarily in the form that you're seeing me right now, but the elements that make up my genetic makeup have existed. It's a very weird thing to think about. But we're seeing that recycling of everything. The numbers, everything, the universe, everything within it. Just, it regenerates. It never ends. Okay, so let's move on. So to kind of wrap this up, I started looking at other numbers that have been generated throughout this entire code, numbers that have come up time and time again. And so the whole process was to see, well, what happens when those numbers are squared or those numbers are cubed? What happens? Very interesting stuff takes place. So as we talked about earlier, 37 being the value of Jesus and 73, the mirror reflection of 37 being the value of Christ. So I wanted to look up the number 37 squared. Well, we already know what 37 squared is because we've seen it before. It's 1369, the value of Jesus in matrix gematria. But 1369 is also the value of the word messenger. Well, what was Jesus in the Bible? He was a messenger. He came with a message. But again, if you think about it, Jesus being the energy source that is contained within all of us, the courses through all of us, that in of itself is a messenger. It's a message telling us that we're all connected to everyone, to everything. So 37 squared is 1369. Now 1369 squared is 1,874,161. Add those numbers separated by the comma, and we get 1036. Now, think about this. 1036, add the number separated by the comma, so we would have 1 plus 036. Well, 0 doesn't calculate at the beginning of a number, so we're going to have 1 plus 36, and we're back to 37. Okay, back to 37. This is what I'm talking about, how these numbers regenerate and come back to themselves. Now, if we don't add the number separated by the comma and just simply add its mirror reflection, so 1036 plus 6301, the mirror reflection, and we have 7337. We've seen this number before, just in a different way. If you recall, 37 times 73, so Jesus in Christ, is 2701, which is the value of Genesis 1:1. And if we take that number, 2701, add its mirror reflection, we have 3773. But here we're seeing 7337. Just like with the Tesseract, it's like the numbers have turned inwards and regenerated, and they've turned inwards, and they're turning inwards every single time. Now check this out. So 1369 cubed is going to be this number. So what is this? This is 2,565,726,409. add the numbers separated by the commas, and we have 1702. 1702. I want you to think about that number, 1702. Look at it. Look at it very hard and tell me what's going on with that number. Well, if you can't figure it out, look what's happening. 1702. If we simply take the 1 and the 2 and reverse their position, we would have 2701. 2701. The value of Genesis 1:1. And by doing that, it is again showing us that the beginning is the end and the end is the beginning. The 2 and the 1 have simply swapped places. But let's look at something else here. So we add the numbers separated by the commas. So 1 plus 702 gives us 703. 703, again, was the portion of Genesis 1:1, the very end portion that made up and the earth. And the earth. Now, I can't remember if I pointed this out or not, but that last portion, and the earth, with the value of 703, has the value of 2701 in matrix gematria. Now, how about that connection? That's pretty intriguing. Now, let's do the same thing. Take 1702 and add its mirror reflection of 2071. And what do we have but 3773? This is what I'm talking about, folks. 3773 and 7337. It's like the numbers have turned inwards, and they're turning inwards. It's the same visual representation that we're seeing here with this tesseract folding back onto itself over and over and over. Regenerating, recycling. Okay, now for shits and giggles, I wanted to see what would happen if we took 1369 to the 4th power. Okay, so I was just kind of going like, okay, let's see where these numbers go. Let's see what happens. So taking 1369 to the 4th power gives us this huge number. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, but again, add the numbers separated by the commas, and we get 2368. 2368 is the value of Jesus Christ in Greek ordinal gematria. I think it's ordinal. No, just standard Greek gematria. 2368. It's the value of Jesus Christ. Okay, again, these connections over and over and over. So for shits and giggles, I played around with the number 666, the value of man, squared it. We get 443,000. I'll get it out here in a minute. 556. Add the numbers separated by the comma, and we're back to 999, the value of light. And also what is technically a not mirror reflection, but a mirror rotated flip of 666. 999. Same thing happens if we cube 666. So we get 295,408,296. Add the number separated by the commas, and we have 999, the value of light. Do the same thing if we were to take 666 to the 4th power. Okay, so we get this huge ass number. Again, add the number separated by the commas. We get 1998, the value of the first 5 words of Genesis 1:1, and a number that's going to come back to 999 when we simply add the numbers separated by the commas. And so interestingly enough, light and darkness, well, light is 999 and darkness is 1702. And folks, when you add those two numbers together, you get 2701. 2701, the value of Genesis 1:1. Do you see what I'm talking about? These numbers regenerating and reforming, and how we should pay even more extra special attention to numbers now, because we could be seeing something in a different way. A number that means something to us, that connects to us in some way, but we're seeing it in a different form. But it reconnects. And it is showing how these numbers reconnect. So just to prove that, 999 plus 1702 is 2701. Okay. And as we all know, 2701 is the equivalent of 37 times 73. And again, adding 2701 to its mirror opposite, as I've shown right here on the screen, is 3773. Again, folks, it's that recycling. Okay, so moving forward very quickly, I decided to do the same thing with the numbers that started all of this. So 333 squared gives us 110,889. Add the two numbers separated by the commas, and we have 999, the value of light. Same thing happens if we are to cube 333. So we get 36,926,037. Add the numbers separated by the commas, and we're back to 999, the light. What happens if we do 1111? Well, 1111 squared, it gives us a palindrome number. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so it reads the same forwards and backwards. Add the numbers separated by the commas, we get 556. Okay, didn't really find anything. So here's where we have to start thinking about not adding all the time, but also subtracting, looking at numbers in different ways. So if we move forward, 1111 cubed gives us this big-ass number, 1,371,330,631. Add the numbers separated by the comma, we have 1333. We'll look at that in just a minute. And then taking 1111 cubed, or not cubed, but 1111 to the fourth power, gives us this giant-ass number. Add the numbers separated by the commas, and we have 1444. So interesting. 1333, and now 1444. So, what do these numbers do? Well, looking at 1333, and if we subtract 556, we get 777. Now, think about this, folks. 777, what is that really telling us? 777, it's 3 sevens. It's 37. It's an encoded 37. The number of the essence, the thing that courses through everything, this thing called Jesus. Now, what happens if we take 1333 and add its mirror reflection of 3331? We get 4664. We have to look at this in the terms of a split, okay? And I think I may have missed something here. I need to go back. We'll go back to something here in just a moment. So that split, 4664. 46, the first two numbers being the value of God, theos in Greek ordinal, and the word truth. 64 is the last two numbers. So it's like we're getting this message about God's truth. God's truth. Okay? Now, let's go back to something here. Yes. I did skip right over this, I think. Yeah, I did. Okay. Well, let's finish this out, and then really quickly, we'll come back to that. We'll come back to that in just a moment. Okay. So now, looking at 1444, add its mirror reflection of 4441, and we have 5885. 5885. Interesting. So I thought, well, what would happen if we take that number and subtracted 4664, and we have 1221. 1221. Okay, this is an important number. And again, it's a number that we have to think ahead and look deeply within. Because what are we seeing here with 1221? We are simply seeing the numbers 37 and 73, but it's encoded. How do we know? Because the number 37 is the 12th prime number, and 73 is the 21st prime number. Excuse me. Thought I was going to get through this without coughing, but I didn't. Okay, so 1221, that's an encoded 3773, as I just mentioned. Okay, so the last slide here very quickly. So now looking at the number 2701, okay? So 2701 squared gives us 7,295,401. Add the numbers separated by the commas, we get 703, that number that came back, with the value of and the earth. We saw it before. And then interestingly enough, if you take 703 and divide it by 37, the number that's the essence that makes up everything, the value of the word Jesus, and divide it, we get 19. And 19 just happens to be the value of the earth in Greek standard gematria. So think about this. 703 is the value of and the earth in Genesis 1:1, and dividing that by 37 gives us 19, with 19 being the value of the earth in Greek standard gematria. Again, these connections. So now, again, 2701 cubed gives us 19,704,878,101. Add the numbers separated by the comma, and we have 1702, a number that we just saw. Okay? The same number where I talked about moving the 2 and the 1. So the 2 from the end to the beginning and the 1 from the beginning to the end. We have 2701. Again, hinting at that phrase, the beginning is the end and the end is the beginning. And then lo and behold, if we take 2701 to the 4th power, we get this ginormous number. Add the numbers separated by the commas, and what are the chances, folks, that we're right back to 2701? Okay? So just mathematically, let's just show this very quickly. So 53 plus 222 plus 875 plus 750 plus 801 is 2701. This is what I'm talking about, folks, when I'm talking about the numbers regenerating, reforming, coming back to themselves. It's a cycle. It's a repeating cycle. That's what this code is showing us, has been showing us since the very beginning. Just like with all the end numbers of the 1111 matrix code in that repeating sequence. What was it? 369, 258, 1470, and then it repeats over and over and over. Okay, so to finally wrap this up, let's go back to that portion that I missed. So when I was talking about taking the numbers of the Torah, squaring them, and then taking that squared number and applying it to 6 sides of a cube, giving us a hollow cube. Well, my next thought was, what happens if we don't make it a hollow cube, we make it a solid cube? Okay, so that would be taking 304,805 times itself 3 times, giving us this number right here. And then we would have to take that number and multiply it times 8, because this number right here is giving us one solid full cube, not hollow, it is solid. We would have to take that 1 cube times 8 to get the tesseract. Okay, the unfolded tesseract, that shape that looks like a cross. So by doing that, we get this giant number, which I'm not even going to pronounce. Don't even think I could if I wanted to. And this number comes out to 2,656. Okay, again, we have to think outside the box. The only connections that I found is a split with this number. 26 and 56. 26 being the value of Yahweh, Jehovah, and 56 being the value of the God. Okay? So if we're reading this like English from left to right, it would be Jehovah, the God. If we're going to read it the other direction, like in Hebrew, it would be the God, Jehovah, or the God, Yahweh, however you want to say it. So interesting connection there. Now, if we do the same thing with the 304,806 cubed, take that times 8 to give us the unfolded tesseract, we get this giant number, which again when added together, add the numbers separated by the commas, we get 1998. The value of the first 5 words of Genesis 1:1, and a number that will come back to 999. The light. So again, folks, it's like these two versions of the Torah are working in unison. It's just these connections, repeating numbers that show up repeatedly. It's simply showing us they were chosen for a reason, and to help solidify the fact that there is a code running throughout this entire thing, running throughout creation. Just like we see here, creation, all of creation. Just repeating and repeating and repeating. Yeah, it's a lot to wrap your mind around. And man, I never thought, before when first, going through this code, like squaring numbers, cubing numbers, like none of that even registered to me until that word Tesseract popped into my head. And then I see this cube and this unfolding cube and just, again, it just generated all these ideas and thoughts of what to do with these numbers, and then seeing how they come back again and again and again to numbers that we continue to re-see and rediscover again and again and again. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. And again, I think it just clearly helps bring home this idea that we are within a mathematical simulation. Everything is a calculation. Everything I'm saying, everything I'm thinking, I am performing a calculation. We can't see it, but it's happening. It's happening. Everything is a number. Everything. Okay, folks, I know that's a lot to digest. Let me know what your thoughts are. I'm sure there's going to be a lot. There's a lot to process here. But think about it. Just think about it. And let me know what you think, what your thoughts are again. So until next time, I hope you all take care, and we'll talk again soon. Bye-bye.